Are you ready? Oh, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
Let's do this thing, man.
The League Podcast.
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? You got J&D here with the League Podcast. We got week 1 almost in the books. Still got a couple games tonight for Monday Night Football. Go Rams. Super excited about those games. But before we get started, go check out our website at www.theleaguefantasyfootball.wordpress.com. And on there, like we always say, all of our social medias are on there. Instagram and Facebook at The League Podcast, and on Twitter at The League Pod. Jay was pretty active on Twitter this weekend answering some questions on starts and sits. I think he gave some pretty good advice to some of these young bucks out there.
Definitely, and I think all of them retweeted, liked, so appreciate the love out there. But first and foremost, we need to talk about this game last night for Sunday Night Football.
Goodness gracious.
And you guys wonder why we paid the man. We showed you last night why we paid the damn man. Thank goodness everything's okay, but we came back with a crazy win last night. It was Christmas Day for me times 1,000. Oh my gosh. I got very scared, obviously. In the first half, down 17-0 to the Chicago Bears. Khalil Mack's looking like the Hulk and Goliath and everything mixed together.
Jared Goff is so happy. That's
oh
all I
my
gotta
goodness.
say.
But and on top of that, that scary Aaron Rodgers injury got carted off the field, or got carted into the locker room, I should say. Was able to walk off, so that was positive, and I was really happy to see him being able to walk because I was devastated. And then in the second half, the man, the myth, the legend comes out, Aaron Rodgers, helmet on the sidelines, ready to get down and play. I think it wouldn't have mattered if his leg was seriously shattered. I think he would have been able to, or try to come out and play, that is. And what do you know? The Packers started doing what they do best, and that's getting offensive plays rolling and getting that ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands as fast as possible. And because of that, it completely ruined that pass rush. Khalil Mack didn't have one more sack, I don't believe, on Aaron Rodgers the rest of the night. They came out and were down 17-0 and came back and won the game 24-23 in a crazy last drive, last win. What Aaron Rodgers does, I should say last drive for the win. Aaron Rodgers just being Aaron Rodgers, and that whole team holding it down. I mean, from Geronimo Allison to Randall Cobb to Devontae Adams to Ty Montgomery, everybody was just really putting the team on their back and doing what they had to do to get that victory. And you could tell Aaron Rodgers had to fall back on his boys because he could only put weight on one leg. I mean, we're going golfing today, and I can't even imagine trying to golf without my left leg, without putting pressure on that. Imagine trying to throw a football.
Hopping
around, running around. I mean, give all the credit in the world to Aaron Rodgers. I hope he's healthy. He did say he's playing next week, which is amazing, but I think his health is the most important thing. But if we're going to continue to win games, and hopefully we can just play to Aaron Rodgers' strengths, obviously, and not let him get hit. Simple as that. Let's go. 1-0, and I thought that was the start to the end last night, so I couldn't be happier.
That was a rough second quarter, that's for sure. Just watching, I didn't even want to watch, and
me neither. Game was almost off at halftime. But it all worked out. I'm so glad. It was a great cap to a great day of football.
It was awesome, man.
Yeah, like I said, it was just Christmas last night. I was so happy to see Aaron come back and do what he does. So, but let's get into these all the rest of the crazy games, Dale. What do you think?
Yeah, so today we're going to be covering every single game from yesterday. Just kind of a quick recap. Talking about a few players from each team and also some players that shocked us. And we always know this after week 1, the waiver wire is a hot commodity. There's a lot of good players out there. So we'll definitely touch base on the top guys that we think you should go after this week. We'll get straight into it, though, and go to the Bengals-Colts game. Bengals won 34-23, but it was a pretty impressive game by Andrew Luck, right?
Definitely, yeah. And like in our last podcast, I was like, Colts are going to come out and shock a lot of people, and I think they did that. I think they proved, or at least Andrew Luck was able to prove that he still got it. He took some big shots. Actually, a Bengals safety got ejected for one of the shots that was hit to Andrew Luck took. So I think they proved a lot, but at the end of the day, I think we knew Bengals were going to come in and win this game. Andy Dalton, AJ Green had a really good day, I should say. But what did AJ Green finish with?
He ended up
he had
finishing with 6 receptions, 92 yards,
and
and
a
1
touchdown.
touchdown. So that's good for 19
Definitely.
points, you
At the
know.
beginning of the game, he had a fumble, which was a little worrisome, but they got it back together. But let's talk about Joe Mixon, man. If you drafted Joe Mixon, you are at least comfortable now knowing that I got an RB1 on my team.
3 down back.
He's the
No
3 down
Gio.
back. He can catch with the best of them. He looks that burst, like I talked about. He looks 15 pounds lighter, and you can tell he's running like a bat out of hell, which is awesome. Loving him, and I want to mention my boy John Ross. All right, we talked about him in the offseason. He had a touchdown, and I don't know, he didn't have a great game, but he did score a touchdown. So
Yeah, he had that one catch, but it was a nice catch for a touchdown, man.
And that
it'll
just goes
get
to show you, though, he's the wide receiver number 2. He's not going to be, like this game, for instance. He's not going over the crazy top when it comes to receptions, but I think he can have those games where he does get the ball a lot more than this one, obviously. But even in the red zone, he's getting work. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And then these running backs on the Indianapolis Colts. So, neither one of them, I think, jumps out crazy, like you got to go get them. A lot of people own your boy,
Jordan Wilkins,
yep. Who he's obviously going to have the opportunity to get the ball more and score touchdowns. But this guy, Nyheim Hines, he's a pass-catching back, rookie this year. He scored more points than your boy, 12.2 points, because he's catching a lot of balls at the backfield. So it's cool to see them, especially with Marlon Mack out, still being able to produce. That's a flex spot you're able to fill with a Nyheim Hines or Jordan Wilkins. So both of those guys were able to produce, and T.Y. too at the same time. T.Y. Hilton had a great game. Andrew Luck and him always, I think, will have that chemistry. They're best of friends.
Who else had a pretty good game was Ryan Grant, the receiver. He had 8 receptions for 59 yards on 9 targets. So he ended up with 13.9 points. So he's definitely someone that you could probably pick up on the waiver this week too if you're kind of hurting on receivers.
Definitely.
They'll be throwing the ball a lot.
And their tight ends, Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron, both had great games, over 10 points for both of them. So.
Yeah.
For that offense to be able to produce like that in all different positions, we got fantasy prospects here that you're going to be able to pick up and use if you need them. So I think the Colts did prove themselves that they can be a good offense, and maybe not the most high-powered offense, but they got enough pieces to the puzzle to make some stuff happen. So it was a good game. Obviously, Bengals came out on top, though, 34-23. Pretty high-powered. Not the best defensive game by any means, but it was a good one. I'm glad to see Andrew Luck get the ball rolling, and I think we, like I said, I think we both knew the Bengals would come into this one winning it. But
yeah, so I agree, and we're going to be just moving on to the next game with Bills and Ravens. We'll touch real quick.
This will be a quickie, huh?
Yeah,
Ravens last week, I stressed on the fact that Ravens defense would win this game, and Bills couldn't even score a touchdown. We talked about Peterman and how he'd have a rough week. Sure as shit, he did. They put Josh Allen in before the game even ended. I don't know if that's just to keep Peterman healthy or because they wanted to see if they could score a touchdown, but regardless, they didn't score a touchdown. They got 1 field goal. Ravens whooped up on them 47-3. Who might be an interesting pickup is Javarius Allen in this Ravens backfield. So Javarius Allen ended with 14.2 points. He had 4 rushes for 17 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 5 passes for 15 yards. So that's production. And Alex Smith, he also had a Alex Collins, he also had a touchdown, but he didn't, I don't know if he got hurt because he does say questionable. So watch that injury because Javarius Allen might just be a RB, filling that RB1 spot in that Ravens backfield. So they also had a couple other guys though in that receiving core that were pretty nice.
Yeah, so it was a pretty consistent day for all the receivers. Joe Flacco got his work in, but he was spreading the ball around. So it's a good thing, but it's also kind of a nerve-wracking thing. Crabtree had 6 targets. John Brown had 4 targets, and let's see, Willie Snead had 6. Willie Snead actually scored the most points out of all 3 receivers with 14, almost 15 points. John Brown, 13.5.
And he's the only one that didn't score, right? Or did he score?
No, he scored. They all scored.
All 3 scored a touchdown.
All 3 of them scored a touchdown.
And both their running backs scored a touchdown. Yeah. That's fantasy production.
It is. So it was a nice week for the Ravens. But if you're hurting on receiver, I would definitely look at a John Brown or a Willie Snead.
I'm picking up John Brown this week.
Yeah. I like John Brown.
And if Willie Snead's out there, he's obviously, Joe Flacco's comfortable throwing him the ball. So
maybe wait another week or 2 if you're not super comfortable on him. But if one of them produces next week, they're going to be probably one of the top guys to go after. So, but other than that, the Ravens receivers, I don't really want anything to do with him. It's like
Yeah.
a foggy backfield in a sense.
Definitely.
So,
But with that being a high-scoring game for the Ravens, let's talk about another game, another 10 a.m. game that was high-scoring all the way around. The Buccaneers versus the Saints still. I mean, I was going to this game thinking that this was going to be a blowout on the Saints side. They were going to destroy the Bucs. And then I had that feeling of whenever I think that this game's going to be a blowout, something always happens. So why don't you touch on your boys here, Dill? It was a little bit of a Fitzpatrick magic show.
it was. And, I've been very high on, Chris Godwin, the receiver
Mhm.
from Penn State. He ended the year good. We had a segment a few back, and I talked pretty highly of him. So I have him on a few teams. Didn't start him.
We
but
talked about him in the last podcast as well.
Yeah, so he ended up scoring a touchdown, only 4 targets, 3 catches, so nothing special, 13 points. But what about Deshaun Jackson? How old is he again? Where
21?
did he
Is he
come
21?
from? Where did he come from? He ended up with 31 points, 5 receptions, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's a home run hitter. We've always known that, and
Yeah.
I didn't know he still had it. But, he landed on his shoulder a couple times, came out, looked hurt, and then at the end of the game, he got a concussion. So he might not even play next week, which is why I'm speaking of Chris Godwin. I think he's going to bump up, into that starting full-time role.
Yeah.
He played a lot, but he'll get a lot more targets with Deshaun out. And then, of course, you had your boy Mike Evans ball out as usual.
And not only ball out, but ball out on a defense who's supposed to be top of the line this year. Balled out on a defensive rookie of the year last year who's poised to be defensive player of the year this year possibly. And Mike Evans said, get out of here with all that. I got signed the big boy money and I'm the big boy in this neighborhood. So Mike Evans had himself a day. That offense had themselves a day. Both offenses in general had themselves a day. If you had any of these players on your fantasy squad, you're killing it.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think another player on the other side of the ball, the Saints. I'm sorry, let me say something real quick. Fitzpatrick, we didn't really touch too much base on him. He was the highest scoring quarterback.
Number 1 quarterback in fantasy football this week with 42.3 points total. He had 417 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. Not to mention, this old man had 12 rushing attempts for 36 yards and a touchdown.
Dude, for that touchdown, he lowered his shoulder, ready to
got
truck
past
someone.
the goal line. Fitzpatrick, way to go. Way to
I know.
put everybody to shame. And I guess wake a sleeping beast in you. Went to Harvard. Must have studied harder than anybody that week because he showed it when it came to game day.
He tore that defense apart.
Way to go, Fitzpatrick. But at the same end, the second best quarterback was Mr. Drew Brees at the same time. So
No.
that regardless, both defenses didn't really help out because both quarterbacks succeeded a lot.
Do you think Fitzpatrick continues the success, or do you think that he comes tumbling back down to his quarterback 2 status?
I think he's going to be pretty consistent. I think he's actually going to do pretty damn good to the point when Jameis gets back, he doesn't even have a starting job.
And then also, real quick, we'll touch the last bit of the Buccaneers, the running backfield.
Yep.
Ronald Jones
Didn't play.
didn't even dress out for the game.
Nope. So Peyton Barber did, obviously. And Peyton Barber didn't have a great game, but he had a decent game. He got all the most work. He had 19 rush attempts for 69 yards. Obviously, resulted in 6.9 points.
All he needed was a touchdown. You would have called it a good
You
week.
would have had him all week, all day as that person to fill in for your flex, whatever that may be. Starting over Isaiah Crowell, I don't know, in that kind of scenario. But, Jacquizz Rodgers got a little bit of work too, but nothing to blow me out of the water by any means. So it'll be interesting and exciting to see a Ronald Jones back there and maybe what he can do. But let's flip it maybe to the Saints side now.
Yeah, definitely. We'll go to the Saints side. Obviously, Drew Brees had a good game.
Yep,
Michael
and
Thomas had a good
Of
game.
course, let me
Kamara
touch
had a good
base
game.
too on Alvin Kamara. This man is running like a bat out of hell. 9 catches for 112 yards and receiving touchdown to score 43.1 points. But why don't you tell us what these receivers did?
Michael Thomas, 17 targets, 16 receptions, 180 yards.
The man's called can't guard Mike for a reason.
38 points, and he would have had 40 if he didn't fumble the ball. But what a game by him. But we knew that was going to happen. We knew those guys would produce. I want to talk about one guy who's probably going to be, once again, one of the top waiver guys this week.
Yep.
Mr. Reliable Ted Ginn Jr. This guy, he was known for having butterfingers, for just being fast. And then he goes to the Saints, and all of a sudden he can catch, and all of a sudden he's one of the top producers. Last year he finished as a top 25, 30 receiver.
Yep.
And then this week he's already finishing as a top, 15 receiver. So What can we expect out of Ted Ginn this year, do you think?
Well, I definitely think he's going to be a roster spot. I'm trying to pick him up on the waiver wire this week because I have a Will Fuller who I would much rather have a Ted Ginn than a Will Fuller on my roster. And at any given time, you could fill him into your starting lineup and feel confident, I think, in what you're going to produce just because that Saints offense is so high-powered. I think they're scoring like this on a weekly basis.
Wow. I mean, they were solid last year too, so I don't disagree with you at all, but that sums up that game. We'll go on to the next one with the Texans at Patriots. Definitely was not a pretty showing by Deshaun Watson and the Texans. They didn't do too bad, but Watson didn't do what everyone expected him to.
Mm-hmm.
On the Patriots side of the ball, though, once again, Tom Brady did what he does, and Rob Gronkowski, top scoring tight end for the week, doesn't surprise me at all. But what about the receiving core? Chris Hogan, I believe, had one catch yesterday.
Yikes.
One catch.
That's scary.
But then you look on the other side of the ball, or not on the other side of the formation, and Philip Dorsett, who they've been kind of talking pretty decently about.
Mm-hmm.
He caught 7 passes on 7 targets. Didn't drop one ball. 66 yards and a touchdown, which was good for 19.6 points. So Dorsett is one of my top guys. I would prefer him over Ted Ginn or, any other receivers out there. So go get him. I think Philip Dorsett will definitely be pretty productive, at least till Julian Edelman gets back. But even when Julian Edelman gets back, I think that Cordell Patterson goes to the bench and Philip Dorsett stays in those 3 receiver sets. And then other than that, I don't really have much to say about the Patriots. The Texans, I guess I should touch a little base on with Will Fuller being out. What's his name? Bruce Ellington stepped up, scored a touchdown, ended up getting you 13.7 points. So not too bad. I definitely probably won't roster him just because Will Fuller will come back and take over those targets from a Bruce Ellington.
But Lamar Miller, this man is an RB1, and I think
For
you are
sure.
so happy if you have him on your team. He had a great game. Talk about only missing a touchdown to just lock in an amazing fantasy day. He had 20 rush attempts for 98 yards. He scores a touchdown right there. I mean, come on. You are loving it. He only caught 1 ball for 11 yards, but that's the beauty of it, too. That's his absolute floor, for receiving. He can catch 5 to 10 balls out of that backfield as well and get you, obviously, a lot more points. So I'm loving what I see out of Lamar Miller. I think a lot of people right now, too, are going to be on the fence with Lamar Miller. He only scored 11 points. But if you look at it, he actually had a really good game. He just needs to get into that end zone, which they struggled with, obviously, in this game. So I really like Lamar Miller. If you don't have him, I think that's someone you could go buy low on right now. Maybe not super low, but you can buy on Lamar Miller, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
especially with Deontay Foreman being out.
Yep, he's the number 1 guy. So Tom Brady, though, at home, he got it done, of course. So Patriots won that one 27-20. Let's jump into another crazy defensive game, in my opinion. Vikings at 49ers.
Yeah, the 49ers definitely kept it a lot closer than anyone expected it to be. But Jimmy Garoppolo, he threw 3 picks.
Nice.
He threw 3 interceptions.
As bad as he ever has on
But
the 49ers.
he looked good. He looked good, but at the same time, he throws those I feel like he's getting known for throwing a lot of interceptions. He makes really good throws, really good plays, but follows it up with the turnover, which turnovers will kill you. And obviously in this game, they lost by 8 points. The Vikings got a pick 6. So without that pick 6, that brings it to a 17-16 game. That's just a field goal away.
Mm-hmm.
49ers don't have to stress about scoring a touchdown. So that will kill him. Kittle obviously looked really good on the 49ers side of the ball, got tons of targets. He didn't end up with the best stat line, 5 receptions for 90 yards. He could have had 10 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns if he didn't drop a pass and if Jimmy Garoppolo didn't overthrow him a couple times on some touchdowns. And then obviously we'll go to the receivers. Marquise Goodwin, 0 points.
Yikes.
Got hurt. Pierre Garçon, 1 or 2 catches, didn't do much for anyone. That 49ers offense did not look good. Alfred Morris, 1 point something points.
Breida looked like he had a burst, but at the same time, if the rest of the offense can't get going, how are those other guys supposed to?
Yeah, so, it's a little nerve-wracking, but you're playing against one of the best defenses in the league, so I wouldn't write them off just yet. We'll see how they do next week. But for the Vikings, they they did what everyone expected them to do. You know, Kirk Cousins produced with 20 points for you. Stephon Diggs, he didn't do too much. He started off pretty hot, and then Thielen obviously followed up with a 100-yard game. So those two receivers are going to they're going to be both producing in that offense. You have nothing to worry about. Rudolph saved me with a touchdown. He had 0 points all game, and they finally caught one pass for a touchdown, so that helped me out a lot. And then let's talk about the running backs. Dalvin Cook. Coming back from that torn ACL, we weren't sure how much work he was going to really get. He did pretty good, 13.5 points.
Definitely.
He caught a few passes, so
he got 6 passes, which has definitely helped his fantasy production for the day.
So
on 7 targets. So.
Yeah. So if you're catching balls in the backfield, that's huge for you. That's what makes David Johnson's value so much as well. But other than that, not too much going. Oh, Vikings defense obviously scored me 17, 18 points, top scoring defense in the week. Can't go wrong starting them every week, no matter who they're playing,
Straight up.
But that's it for that game. We'll move on to the Titans-Dolphins.
The game that only you saw quarters at a time of due to weather delays.
15-hour game.
These poor guys started at 10 a.m. They had their pregame meals at probably 8:30, 9 a.m. And their game went till 6 p.m. in the afternoon, 7 p.m., which was insane. So this game was definitely hard, and I think it was, an interesting game because of these delays. It's so hard as a player to come back and play consistently on it. So Marcus Mariota did have he looked really good at the beginning of the game. I was texting you saying how accurate he was looking. He started off, I think, 100%, 8 for 8 in the beginning of the game. But he did have a weird injury where he lost the feeling in his hand, and it kind of does scare me this week one already having an injury. So, not talking about injuries, Delaney went down. And he looks like he could be out for the year. So, Dill, who's a guy that you are looking at the tight end spot to fill in for Delaney Walker on that Titans roster?
So, Jonnu Smith, the second-year pro from FIU, he has shown flashes. I mean, he's got the athletic ability. He definitely seems like a player that can step into that Delaney Walker role. Obviously, he's going to be no Delaney Walker, but he's definitely going to get some targets. That's an offense that throws their tight end a lot.
Loves their tight end.
During the game, they were talking pretty highly of him after he dropped a pass, actually. But we'll see. If you need tight end, obviously he's worth a pickup and see what to do with him.
Yeah. So on that receiving core for the Titans, though, Rashard Matthews scored a big goose egg. Nothing. So he's supposed to be the main guy, but I told you from day one, Corey Davis is going to be that guy. So Corey Davis, he ended the game. He could have had a much better game, in my opinion. There were some balls that were dropped, and not dropped necessarily. It was just off timing. Marcus Mariota had to get rid of it. So it'd be before Corey Davis could get his head around. But at the end of the day, he had 6 receptions for 62 yards for 12.2 points. He had the best wide receiver fantasy production in that offense. So I think Corey Davis, you're happy with as your wide receiver 2 or flex all day long.
Not to mention 13 targets.
13 targets, exactly. So, and it would have been nice. That's what I mean, is he could have had so much better of a day. Only 6 of those he caught, almost a little over 50%. So
you get your second-string quarterback coming in. It's going to definitely hurt your production. That's
so
for sure.
Who really had a great day, obviously, is Mr. Dion Lewis, your boy. So Dion Lewis, I think it was a lot of due to game flow as well, because they were kind of playing from behind since the beginning. So they had to get Dion Lewis involved a lot. Dion Lewis had a really good day. He had 22 points. He had 16 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 5 catches and 35 yards in the air. So Dion Lewis definitely is going to get you PPR points always, every week, weekly start. The other guy who wasn't able to make much happen was Derrick Henry. And like I said, I think it was a lot due to game flow and due to the fact it was a 16-hour game, and this guy weighs bigger than most of the offensive linemen. This man has to eat before his meals. So I don't know what that looked like. I don't think they had him in the right situation this week, but I think goal line-wise, Derrick Henry is still going to be a touchdown monster this year, and even though we didn't see it this week out of him. But Titans ended up losing to the Dolphins 27-0. Dolphins actually 27-0, sorry. 27-20. Dolphins took the win. Dolphins, I think, surprised a lot of people with not only their defense, but their offense. Their offense made a lot of things happen, man. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is definitely a person you should pick up. If you have a Matt Ryan, why not sub him out for a Tannehill who could possibly, play better than him? He ended with 13.6 points, which isn't whopping, but better than Matt Ryan. Yeah. He had some rushing attempts, which is nice, obviously, because Ryan Tannehill can move. But what are some of the receiver stats, though?
Well, Mr. Kenny Stills, who he is so underrated every single year, and he's making big plays every single year. He ended the day with 26 points. Yeah, he only had 4 receptions, but 106 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I wonder how many benches Kenny Stills was sitting on this week.
Oh my gosh, man, I can't even imagine. And then, you look at the other receivers. Danny Amendola didn't do anything.
Yep.
I mean, he caught a few passes for a few yards.
What about my boy Jakeem Grant, who I've been praising about?
Jakeem Grant actually had more targets. 7 targets for 5 receptions and 38 yards. Not a ton of yardage, but he's getting the targets and he's playing.
And he's such a playmaker that on kick returns or punt returns, what does he do?
I believe he got a punt return touchdown.
To the crib.
Crib.
Like I said, every time this guy gets the ball in his hand,
he's
so explosive. Makes me jump out of my chair because I know he's got that Tyreek Hill ability to just get to the crib. So, and then not to mention Albert Wilson too, who doesn't have a crazy game on paper, but if you're watching the game, he's being so involved in that offense. He's lining up as a running back, getting rushing yards. He's getting plays out of the slot, out of the outside receiver, getting screen plays. He is definitely involved in that offense. So look at him. If there's any injuries that happen to pop up, Albert Wilson could be someone that succeeds in this offense as well. But like I said, Miami was able to win this out in a weird-looking game in Miami. Lightning and thunder and rain and all that, so it was a very odd one. 2 game delays, so it was a tough one to base any fantasy value for the future off of. But both these teams, I think, have players that are worth watching going into next week. So,
yes, sir.
Dill, why don't you take it over with the next game? We got a young rookie, Saquon Barkley. We got a young Buck that's now paid Odell. We got a young Sterling Shepard and Eli. We got a young Jaguars defense. Who took this game, Dill? And talk to us about some players in it, please.
So Jags won 20-15. This was a defensive battle. The Giants' defense looked really good. They looked really solid.
Oh, that's odd.
Mr. J over here called this game. He said the Giants would win, but he said it'd be close. I didn't think so. Surprisingly, or no surprise, the Jaguars' our defense shut down the Giants' offense.
Yep.
Yes, Odell produced just because he's Odell Beckham. Lots of short passes.
Which I stressed. Odell was going to get the space, and he's still going to get the work, and he did. He didn't score, but he had 11 receptions for, I think, 111 yards.
Yep, on 15 targets. So I'll take that all day. Those in a PPR league, you're drooling at the mouth. But
I'm drooling right now.
Other than that, Saquon Barkley was shut out for most of the game, but then they got that beautiful play. What did his stat line end up at?
Saquon, he obviously that first half was definitely a little scary. So he ended up with 18 rushes, 106 yards and a touchdown, and not to mention he caught 2 balls for 22 yards. Ended with 20.8 points fantasy-wise at the end of the day.
I'll take that all day.
Come on.
All day.
Especially for a rookie in his debut when his first half looked scary as could be. I'm so happy he broke that touchdown against the defense who is so good. Regardless of what it says on paper, they are so dominant, and I think they're going to obviously be the number 1 defense in the league this year. So,
yeah, definitely. And, I mean, other than those 2 guys on that offense, Evan Ingram got shut down.
Had some great catches, but yeah, definitely shut down.
Sterling Shepard got shut down as well.
Yeah, he
had some great
catches, but they were funnel feeding it to Odell and Saquon in that offense.
Yeah, and then so on the other side of the ball, we have Blake Bortles, who didn't have a great game. But let's talk about the running backs. Leonard Fournette started off nice and strong, looked like it was going to be, once again, a top 5 running back. Goes down with a groin injury, hamstring injury, just like last year, constantly. So Yeldon came in and he produced. He did pretty well, right?
Yeah, he scored a touchdown yesterday. It was a receiving touchdown, too. TJ Yeldon had 3 catches for 18 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets, and he also had 14 carries for 51 yards, and that's not to mention he didn't even start the game.
Yep.
If he goes into next week being the starter, TJ Yeldon's an easy. He's going to be, I think, one of the top waiver wire pickups, obviously due to the Leonard Fournette owners scrambling. And why not? This guy's going to be a number 1 against the pretty decent offensive line and a defense who's incredible and going to give them lots of opportunity. So I think Jaguars are very smart, or TJ Yeldon in that aspect is a very smart pickup this week.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, for those Jaguars receivers, this is what it makes me nervous. Obviously I was super high on Keelan Cole, and he didn't even end up with the most points. It was D.D. Westbrook with 10 points. 5 receptions for 51 yards, no touchdowns. Keelan Cole had 3 receptions for 54 yards and no touchdowns. So those two guys are definitely the guys you want to have in that offense. They're going to get that work. They're going to get those targets. Let's see, what's his name? Dante Moncrief was quiet. He didn't do much yesterday.
He was out there a lot, though. He was in most of the offensive snaps yesterday, but just you could tell Blake Bortles doesn't have that chemistry with him. D.D. Westbrook, it seemed like he had the most chemistry with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dante Moncrief had 1 reception for 14 yards on 5 targets. So he was targeted, but just couldn't make anything happen. They're just not on the same page, especially with him having multiple injuries throughout the offseason and whatnot. But that pretty much sums up the fantasy production from this game. Go pick up Yeldon if he's available in your league, and we'll see what happens with Fournette. But anyways, talking about in a close, crazy, interesting, long game, the Steelers at Browns.
Yes, sir.
The Browns were looking for their first win
and I
over
thought they were
going to
get it.
Oh, man, such a bummer. Why don't you talk about some of that game, Jay?
I made a crazy prediction last week in our last podcast saying that Pittsburgh was going to struggle going into Cleveland, and Cleveland was going to take out this W. And they almost did. They almost had it. If they didn't block the field goal, that last field goal, Cleveland Browns would be waking up today being real happy in their first W in over a year. So that wasn't the case, though. They ended in a freaking tie. I really missed double overtime. I think the one overtime tie it's kind of lame in my opinion. I really would like to see a winner in a game. But let's talk about some fantasy production. James Conner, you are so stoked if you have James Conner. Number 2 overall running back this week. I mean, the guy touched the ball more than, anybody, obviously, this week. The only other person that touched it anywhere close to him was Adrian Peterson with 26 attempts. But James Conner touched the ball for 31 rushes, had 135 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then catching the ball, he had 5 receptions for 57 yards with a total points in fantasy of 34.2 points. So if you don't have Le'Veon Bell and you picked up James Conner or drafted James Conner, you are a smart man. And if you listen to me and did that, obviously you're probably going to do that anyway. But anybody that also, too, has James Conner that doesn't have Le'Veon Bell, you have an RB1 behind the best offensive line in the NFL, in my opinion. So James Conner all day. I do think, though, without Le'Veon Bell, that's part of the reason why they didn't win this game. I think it would have been a win in the Steelers' book if Le'Veon Bell plays this game, regardless of how good James Conner did. But, Dill, why don't you stress a little bit? Ben Roethlisberger had a rough game, 3 interceptions. Denzel Ward looked incredible. That defense looked incredible for the Cleveland Browns. But there was some fantasy production out of that receiving core, regardless of Ben Roethlisberger having a mediocre, if that, day.
Yeah, Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, they're getting looks. They both Juju had 15 targets, and Antonio Brown had 15 targets as well. Antonio Brown ended up with 11 receptions for 111 yards, and Juju was 7 receptions for 106. They both went over 100 yards, so they both produced for you. Juju 17.6 points, and Antonio Brown 24.3 points. So I'll take that all day.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take that all day.
Juju's a rising star. If you got Juju, you're so stoked as your wide receiver, too, all day.
Yeah.
So you know what you're going to expect. Obviously, it was a slopping game, rain, so I think that they'll be able to produce even more when it comes to those sunny days, and they're able to catch. So, like I said, that you know what you're getting out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Browns, man, you are so stoked to see Jarvis Landry producing. Tyrod Taylor, I started in some DFS leagues. That's someone that's on the the waiver wire that you could pick up today and go start. Tyrod Taylor has the rushing ability, rushed for a 40-yard touchdown yesterday, scored through a couple touchdown passes. The guy's a monster. I'm worried about how much he's getting hit already, though. So you're gonna watch Baker Mayfield. He just did on the sidelines. He could be picked up soon, but. Their running back situation, Carlos Hyde, he was obviously the guy getting all the work. He had 22 rush attempts for 62 yards and a touchdown. So you're pretty confident in Carlos Hyde if you got him. I would be so stoked to have him. I don't in any of my leagues, but another guy who's getting a lot of hits early on, where you look at Duke Johnson, he already got a little banged up in yesterday's game.
He didn't look too good. He looked like he lost
a lot of targets, but man, he did not look great. And that's why I want you to keep your eye on Nick Chubb. He already got some work in, and with injuries already popping up in that backfield, you are going to want to keep your eye on Nick Chubb. But that Browns defense, too, sneakily sneakily an ad in my opinion. Denzel Ward, 2 interceptions. Myles Garrett getting sacks and strips. I mean, that Browns defense is definitely a beast this year, and I think they're gonna have a solid year in my opinion. I mean, tying the Steelers, that's huge in the Browns organization.
To start the season off against a rival like that, I mean, they're
not lose. I mean, they didn't win, but they did lose. So it was a sloppy game, but it was a good game. Some really good fantasy production on the Steelers side. So, Josh Gordon, he scored a touchdown only off 1 reception, though. I thought, at the beginning of the game, I wasn't loving what I saw to Josh Gordon. He didn't look like he was running through his routes all the way. He had some bad penalties called against him, but, was able to make that amazing catch. So, hopefully there's promise for Josh Gordon in that offense.
He'll be on the uproar, obviously, with the touchdown, and the more they get him involved in that game, he only had 3 targets. So if he can double or triple those targets, I think he'll definitely make more plays.
And he was on a pitch count, so once he can get 100% involved in that offense, we'll see some stuff out of him. But let's go to the next game. It was a very high scoring game. Chiefs versus Chargers. I called this last week as well. Said Chiefs are going to go in. Did I say Chargers? No, I said Chiefs are going to go in and win. I was so confident in Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and what did they do? I have them stacked in in our Dynasty League, Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I almost put up 100 points between the two of them. What a week. I mean, Tyreek Hill silenced all the doubters this week. I don't know how anybody was down on him to begin with. He's way too fast and way too elite, hands-wise too, to be down on. And Pat Mahomes, oh my gosh, he could be a major league pitcher. He throws the ball so fast. I mean, in tight windows, Pat Mahomes is rocketing the ball into these windows and getting his receivers what they need. I mean, Sammy Watkins didn't have a great game, but Tyreek Hill did have one. So what were Tyreek Hill's final stats?
So Tyreek ended up with 7 receptions for 169 yards, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets, scored a punt return touchdown, also had 2 rushes for 4 yards, ended up with 42 points.
As the number 1 receiver.
As the number 1, and everyone's talking about Sammy Watkins, this top 5 paid receiver.
What did he end up with?
5 points.
5 points.
3 receptions for 21 yards. Exactly why the Rams let him go. Tonight, you're going to watch Brandon Cooks, and you're going to say, oh, that's why they did that. That's why they did that.
And I can't wait because I got Brandon Cooks on a couple lineups in this week's matchups. But so Tyreek Hill, you're comfortable owning him. Someone who I have stressed on, worrisome about is Mr. Kareem Hunt. All right, I've talked about from the beginning of the end of last year that we're going to see regression out of Kareem Hunt. I'm telling you, people, and we did. We saw it pretty bad. He only ended up with, I think, 5 points in yesterday's matchup. So, that's definitely worrisome in my opinion. I think that with Spencer Ware, who didn't get that much work either, he ended up with a couple points as well. I just don't know if they're going to be able to. I really don't. I don't know if Kareem Hunt has a couple good games and a couple bad. Regardless, I do think we see regression just like we did week 1. Remember week 1 for Kareem Hunt last year? He broke records, I think.
3 touchdowns. Like, he was the Tyreek Hill of last year.
And I think this is a lot of what they're going to be doing is passing the ball and setting up maybe opportunities for Kareem Hunt to get screen passes, but I think they have so many elite weapons with Kelsey, who didn't even do that great. Obviously, Tyreek Hill was the star of that game, and they were funnel feeding it to him, and it worked out well for them because they got the win. Chiefs outplayed the Chargers 38-28, but not to discount the Chargers. Everyone in that Chargers offense ate yesterday. I mean, it was unbelievable. Melvin Gordon ended the day as the 3rd overall running back in week 1. He ended with 27.6 points. He had 9 catches for 102 yards and 15 rushes for 64 yards. I mean, he didn't even score a touchdown, and he ended as the 3rd overall back in fantasy.
What about Austin Eckler, the number 6 fantasy running back for the week?
2 top 6 running backs. Unbelievable. Eckler, he had 5 rushes for 39 yards, and where he really ate was his catching abilities. 5 receptions, 87 yards, and that touchdown reception over the top. Phil Rivers thought he was throwing an interception, and it was like, oh, because Eckler came down with the ball. Eckler's balling out there, and he might not even be considered a handcuff at this point. No, he might be considered a flex position
he gets
weekly
enough
basis.
Volume. He's going to get the touches.
What's amazing about that offense is it's not only they're getting work. Keenan Allen had an amazing day. I don't know what Keenan Allen ended up with. Talk to me, Dale.
8 receptions, 108 yards on 11 targets for a touchdown.
So you-
26 points.
You know Keenan Allen's going to end
every week.
every week as a PPR monster and has top 5, if not top 3 wide receiver potential every week. And then someone I'm stressing about who I think is a waiver wire pickup this week is my boy, Mr. Mike Dub Williams. I've been stressing on is making big plays in all offseason, and what do you know? He continues to work, and he got work. The only thing he was missing is a touchdown, and he would have been an amazing wide receiver 2 flex start this week. I think you have to pick him up on the waiver wire. What were his final stats?
5 catches, 81 yards, and 6 targets.
Get out of
13
here.
points.
My man,
not
13
bad.
points. He would have had 20 points with a touchdown. So I think as a pickup, in my opinion, you could store him on your roster all day. I have him in one of my leagues. I drafted him, and the other couple, I'm like, I gotta pick him up. Why not? Everyone in that
If
offense
he's out there,
eats.
you pick him up.
Definitely. Did Tyrell Williams have anything going for him?
No, he struggled as well as that. I mean, other than those 2 guys, Travis Benjamin, 1 catch for
Mhm.
1 yard on 5 targets.
But you have a Melvin Gordon catching 9 passes
Yeah.
and an Austin Eckler catching 5 passes. So it's I mean, they're eating. That offense definitely has fantasy production written all over it. They unfortunately didn't get the win. But I think with Joey Bosa being out, that definitely was a big hurt to that Chargers defense. I think getting him back, their defense is going to be looking even better. But Chiefs came out on top. Their offense just looked way too powerful and took them out. So Chiefs got the W, 38-28. And then we transitioned into some night games, huh?
Yeah, afternoon, night games,
Afternoon.
whatever, West Coast, East Coast, whatever you want to call it.
So we have Cowboys-Panthers. Couldn't wait for this. Cam, the man, the Superman, the myth. I couldn't wait for him to play. He's my starting quarterback in our dynasty or in our keeper league. So super anxious about what to expect from that offense. Devin Funchess, I think everyone expected a lot more out of. Regardless of how that ended up, Panthers got the W in a very low scoring game. It was 16-8. Panthers came out on top. So I was really hoping to see something of DJ Moore with Curtis Samuel out. DJ Moore had a big nothing. I think he had couple points. I think he had some rushing attempts. I don't
1
even think
rush for 3 yards.
yeah,
and that's
so
it.
he had
No targets.
0.3 points. So that's very worrisome. I'm considering dropping DJ Moore, even though he has the really high upside. There's guys that we've already talked about in this segment that are much more worth an ad than a DJ Moore. So
Definitely.
what I did like, obviously, is what I saw out about Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey. Those boys right there can put in the work and can win games by themselves. Who I also liked was C.J. Anderson. I think he showed he still has a burst. I'm not saying you have to go out and get him by any means, but he's 1 injury away from being an RB1 in that backfield. So C.J. Anderson still has that burst. He looked good in my opinion, so I wouldn't discount him or count him out by any means. Cowboys, on the other hand, they look sloppy. Look like they're hurting without some of their big play targets in Jason Witten and Des Bryant. Zeke can't do everything. That offensive line, like you stressed on last podcast, looks like to be the beginning of the end for them, starting to fall apart. Dak was inaccurate. I just don't love anything about that Cowboys this year.
No, not at all, man. And
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, we talked about the Cowboys receivers and which one to own last week, and we had no idea.
It was in the
We
air.
had no idea, and it comes down to really the only one I think, and only really if you're in a PPR, is Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley actually had a pretty nice day. 7 catches for 73 yards on 8 targets. So he had 14 points. Not too bad. But you look at the other receivers, who do you think was the second receiver on that team?
So I'd want to say Allen Hurns, but I know it's not.
It's not Allen Hurns.
I want to say
Michael Gallup.
Gallup, but it's not.
No.
So it must be
Deontay Thompson. So Deontay Thompson, did he do anything? Not really. 3 receptions for 27 yards. But he was their second leading receiver in that offense behind Allen Hurns, who had 1 catch for 20 yards. And then Michael Gallup, who had 1 catch for 9 yards. Everyone's talking up Michael Gallup so high, saying he's going to be the sleeper. I shouldn't say he's not going to be, but Dak Prescott couldn't get anything going. They were on him like white on rice.
Yeah.
So that is a nerve-wracking. I would not touch anyone in that offense besides Zeke Elliott.
Yeah, and Zeke, he finished the day with 17.6 points, so he's going to get you weekly production.
They are going to
as we
feed him the
know.
ball. He's
He
the best
did
player
score a
on that team.
touchdown, the only touchdown of the game for the Cowboys, but the Cowboys' defense does look really good
They
too.
do.
So I think the defense is going to be able to provide the offense with opportunities, but they got to be able to capitalize off their defensive opportunities. And Panthers' defense on the other end looks amazing as well. So it's going to be, obviously Panthers offense had the edge, and that's what won them the game. So Panthers took it 16-8 in a great game. I'm happy what I saw out of Cam. He's looking confident and good. And that'll take us to our next game. Redskins at Cardinals. Redskins looked incredible.
They
Alex Smith looked so poised. He looked like he's been in that offense as long as he's been with the Chiefs. I mean, Redskin, he looks so comfortable. So happy to see Jordan Reed healthy. Jordan Reed's a big part of their offense.
number one receiver in their offense.
Number
we should
one
say.
receiver, definitely is the best receiver in their offense as well. And as long as he can stay healthy, they're going to be doing big things. And not to mention, when you have an Adrian Peterson who's finishing as a top 7 fantasy running back with 22.6 points, and he touched the ball the second most, only behind James Conner with 26 rush attempts, 96 yards total, and 1 touchdown. And he caught the ball twice for 70 yards receiving. Adrian Peterson had himself a day.
He did.
Fantasy production out the yin yang, and he's looking fresh still. I would even start Adrian Peterson going into next week as well.
With
But-
confidence.
With confidence. But loving what I see on the Redskins. Cardinals scared me to death.
Sam Bradford scared me to death. I started him in a 2-quarterback league, got me 3 points or whatnot.
Oof.
Even you look at that receiving core, not obviously you got Larry Fitch, who's always going to get the targets, always going to get the catches. He ended up with 14.6 points on 7 receptions on 73 yards and 10 targets. But behind him, really, it was tight ends. He was throwing Ricky Seals Jr. and the running backs. The next leading receiver on the team was Christian Kirk with 1 catch for 4 yards. So that is very concerning.
Very
I would
worrisome.
not touch any of those receivers like we talked about last podcast, except for Larry Fitz. And then obviously David Johnson is getting tons of looks,
Mhm.
tons of targets in that receiving
But, I mean,
category.
even in the first half, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Even David Johnson can't get it going, but then
Their offense just barely was on the field in the first half.
Yeah.
They were a lot of 3 and outs, a lot of on and off. And then Chase Edmonds, second running back on the team, is definitely someone to look at for the waiver. He got a decent amount of looks. He had, I believe, 4 or 5 catches yesterday. So it's not too bad for the rookie running back. On the other side of the ball, though, with the Redskins, I wanted to talk about their receiving core. Jordan Reed obviously had a good day, but other than that, everyone's been high on Josh Doxson the last couple of years. Drop him. He's done. I don't think Josh Doxson is worth anything anymore. Yesterday he had 1 reception for 11 yards.
Mhm.
What he's been doing for the last 2 years he's
Yep.
been in the league, nothing. There's a lot of people who have him on the roster. At this point, it's better to go after like Paul Richardson, who had 4 receptions for 22 yards and 6 targets. Not much, but he's definitely he's getting more looks than Josh Doxson was. Jamison Crowder definitely disappointed with only 3 receptions for 32 yards. So there wasn't much, but they didn't have to really throw the ball because they were up so much.
they actually did though, because Chris Thompson, we didn't mention Chris Thompson,
Yeah.
who he finished as the best receiver on the day. He
Yeah.
had six catches for 63 yards and a touchdown receiving. So he's their receiver. And not only that, Alex Smith, he was forcing it to Chris Thompson in those little dump off plays. He felt so comfortable getting it to CT, and Chris Thompson was running like bat out of hell. Once again, I use that term a lot, but he really looked good. So
He did. He was very fast, very quick, very elusive. I mean, I loved everything I saw out of Chris Thompson. But Alex Smith, he's in a lot of waivers. I think he is one of the top waiver wire pickups, especially if you have like an Aaron Rodgers or something, to get a backup quarterback just to be safe, just in case something's wrong with him or whatnot. I definitely would go with an Alex Smith, definitely over a Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
But
I drafted Alex Smith in the last pick of our draft in one of our leagues and started him this week, Alex
Nice.
Smith, because I went that route of not drafting a quarterback till the very, very end. And look, I got an Alex Smith who's looking so consistent already week 1, but I'm saying just throwing the ball, he's going to be not turning it over. He's going to be a smart
underrated
quarterback.
every single year.
And he's got weapons on that offense to make it happen.
Yeah,
So,
Redskins look really good. Cardinals, on the other hand, did not. If you have David Johnson, it could be a cause for concern because of the offense. But having David Johnson, one of the best players in the NFL, he's gonna make do with what he has because he's gonna catch the ball. But that running production, only 9 rushes, so that makes me a little nervous as a DJ owner. But I have faith in him. Can't wait to get my DJ jersey. Anyways, moving on to the next game, Seahawks Broncos. This was a pretty good game. A lot of good fantasy production
Definitely.
from kind of both sides of the ball, really.
Yeah. Well, and having Dylan has Emmanuel Sanders, I have Demarius Thomas in our keeper league. So that was cool seeing both of them being able to produce, both of them scoring. You're happy with what you're seeing out of that offense, in my opinion. I think someone who we need to talk about and who's not being talked about, especially with this Devontae Booker injury happening. Everyone's so high on Rolls-Royce Freeman. Even myself, high on Rolls-Royce Freeman. But where in tarnation did this guy, and we shouldn't say where in tarnation did he come from, because we saw the flashes in preseason of Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay, he was incredible in yesterday's game. Every time he touched the ball, he looked like a young veteran.
Kamara. He looked like a Kamara.
You're right, he did. He finished the day. He had 15 rushing attempts for 71 yards. He caught 2 passes for 31 receiving yards and scored on a reception. So Phillip Lindsay is definitely, I think someone to pick up this week. He's a waiver wire must add, in my opinion, especially if you took a hit this week at somebody that in the running back position. Devontae Freeman got hurt. Go pick up Phillip Lindsay. He might be someone that might be able to be a weekly start. So,
in my opinion, he's a number 1 waiver wire pickup this week. That's what I'm saying.
there you have it. And he looked like it. I mean, he looked like an amazing he's a rookie, and he just looks incredible. He looks that burst. Every time he touches the ball, he's getting positive yardage. And one of those guys that every time he touches the ball, you're like, he could break it to the house. Like, he has that breakaway speed. So that was something I really wanted to touch base on. Not to mention the receivers that looked great in that Broncos offense.
What about Cortland Sutton?
Who's getting work?
He had some nice catches yesterday too,
Definitely.
and he's in the offense a lot. But obviously, Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are the guys. So if something happens to them, then he definitely goes in the fantasy conversation. But man, I love what I saw out of Emmanuel, and I know you love what you saw out of Demaryius.
Definitely. Why don't you, Dill, touch base on your Seahawks running backs? Because you have Chris Carson in a lot of leagues. Rashad Penny's being drafted pretty high. Chris Carson's jumping over people. Talk to me.
So Chris Carson, he's one of those guys. If he gets a good amount of touches, he's gonna produce.
Mhm.
He is a beast. He's a hard runner. He can catch the ball. He can jump over people. He's the next coming of Todd Gurley. I'm telling you right now. I drafted him in every league because he's gonna be my keeper in every league if I do keep a league. But Rashad Penny actually got a lot of work too, which made me a little nervous. But at the end of the day, Chris Carson looked better. Chris Carson, he's physically better fitted for the type of 3-down back role. Rashad Penny's a lot smaller and he's already getting hurt throughout preseason, so he makes me a little nervous.
Did look good though.
He did. Does it make me a little nervous that he looked as good as he did? Yes, it does. Because they obviously invested a lot of draft capital in this guy. So I think he'll definitely be, as the year goes on, if he continues to do this, I think it's going to be it's an RBBC there.
Definitely.
They're both going to get work. They're both going to get touches. I think that Chris Carson is going to score all the touchdowns for them, though. I think that Rashad Penny moves into that 3rd-down back role. But not even. I think they're going to just rotate in and out. And depending on game flow, that's who's really going to be. I mean, it doesn't really matter on game flow. I'm sorry, because yesterday they both were doing both. They were both running. They were both catching. So both of them didn't get much opportunity. Both of them didn't score very many points. But let's talk about the receivers of the Seahawks. Doug Baldwin, hurt, out for game.
Dang.
He already had an injury. I guess this is a different leg, though. I'm scared.
News.
I have him on a couple leagues. I didn't start him yesterday, thank God. But Tyler Lockett, what do you think about him? Do you think
Love
he's
him.
a top guy to pick up this week?
In our Dynasty League, I already have him. I drafted Tyler Lockett because of the reason why is because Seattle obviously likes what they see in Tyler Lockett to lock him down for another 3 years. They signed him to another decently sized contract, which means they have plans for him in this offense. So not only did I think that before, but now with Doug Baldwin going out, he's going to be the wide receiver number 1. He's going to be that number 1 guy, which is scary to me because he's not built like a wide receiver 1. He's a great complement to a Doug Baldwin on the other side. But with Tyler Lockett's return ability on top of that breakaway speed
Big
on that
playability.
offense.
He averaged 20 yards a catch yesterday.
So I think I have nothing but high ceiling for Tyler Lockett. I think if he's on your waiver wire, you have to go get him because he could be a wide receiver 2 flex spot for you on a weekly basis in that offense.
100%. And then also their tight end situation. Who the heck is Will Dissy?
That helps. That helps nobody. That's that guy yesterday. He helped absolutely nobody because I doubt anybody had him on their fantasy team. I mean, talk to me, Dill. Who is this guy?
Dude,
What's
number
his-
2 tight end.
Number 2
Yesterday.
in fantasy production.
19.5 points, 3 receptions on 105 yards, and a touchdown. He had 5 targets. This guy, he's sharing some time in the tight end room, but I think he's getting ahead. I think he's going to soon be the guy that he's going to start surprising a lot of people. And I think Russell Wilson does like to go to his tight end, especially down in the red zone.
Clearly.
Big targets. He's number 88, just like Jimmy Graham. So I think he just sometimes thinks it's Jimmy Graham.
Dissly. Remember the name because every time I flipped to that game, it was Will Dissly catching the ball and getting huge chunks of yardage. So I think that guy right there, man, you got to keep your eye on. Like you said, he's moving up the depth chart, and he's going to be that number one guy here soon.
And tight ends are so hard to come by. They are so hard to come by. So he might be a one and done. He might have this one good week and then disappear like Austin Hooper last year with his big game and whatnot. But he's definitely someone to either keep an eye on or pick up if you really have that extra roster spot.
Well, Doug Baldwin doesn't play. This just opens the door even more for guys like this to be able to flourish in that offense that you can start on a weekly basis. Injuries, as sad as they are, they just open the doors for these other guys to flourish. So he could be definitely someone to keep your eye on.
One last guy I want to talk about is Case Keenum. Another guy that I think, like right now I have Carson Wentz in a lot of leagues, so I'm sitting here, who am I going to start next week? I started Matt Ryan in a couple of these leagues for him. Didn't work out. Not a big fan of Matt Ryan. Didn't like what I saw. Yes, it was against Eagles offense or defense, one of the best. But Keenum looked pretty good. Obviously, he made a couple bad throws. I think he had, 2 interceptions?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, cut down those interceptions. That'll definitely boost him up a little bit. But he has a good connection with Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. I have Emmanuel Sanders in a couple leagues, so why not stack those guys on top of each other? I think their matchup next week isn't too tough. But, yeah, I mean, Keenum, he ended up leading them to victory, 27-24. Go Case. I've always been a fan since he was on the Rams. So that pretty much wraps up our daily podcast for Week 1 recap. Obviously, we have 2 games tonight. A player I think that is going to be a real big waiver wire commodity as well on the Packers. Geronimo Allison had a big game yesterday.
Yep, he definitely did.
That's the one we didn't really talk too much about picking up, but I think Geronimo Allison definitely is someone that you need to get if you need a receiver. He's going to get targets. Him and Aaron Rodgers obviously have a great connection. But great week, brother.
Definitely.
Loved it.
And, I'll finish since, you went with someone. You said you don't know who to play as your quarterback. Young Mitchell Trubisky last night looked damn good. And if he's going to be on all waiver wires out there, he didn't have a passing touchdown, but he had 7 rushes for 32 yards and scored off a rushing touchdown. And he passed for almost 200 yards. He has the weapons in that offense in Trey Burton and Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel to make stuff happen. So if you're a down quarterback and you waited till the end or drafted a Carson Wentz who's not playing, look at Mitchell Trubisky, young buck, to put up some points for you. But I love that Geronimo Allison ad. I'm not saying anything because I want him. But always a pleasure, Dill. Great week 1, and I can't wait to get into next week.
Yeah, definitely. And guys, if you haven't already, follow us on all social media, Facebook, Instagram at The League Podcast, and on Twitter at The League Pod. Go check out our website, www.theleaguefantasyfootball.wordpress.com. It's got all that on there, plus all of our current podcasts, rankings, and more. So have a great day, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Over and out.
What did I do? What did I do? The league, huh?